like to talk to you about some general packing tips. It's pretty much one of the biggest things you can do to prepare, and you're going to notice really fast whether you've done it right or not. So keep in mind a motto that I came up with called deal with it. It has two meanings. The first one means whatever you're going to bring with you, you're going to have to deal with it. You can't just go home and store it. Second meaning is when you use something in day to day, it really is used for something convenient typically, not really a need. So think about what it's used for and whether you really need it or not, or can you just deal with the consequences. So you really need to know what you're doing. Are you going to be backpacking generally and you're going to be ready for hiking or camping along with urban backpacking? Or are you just going to be urban backpacking, staying in hostels, taking trains? Are you just hiking near home? These are things you really need to ask yourself, and this will determine pretty much everything that you're going to take with you. For example, my bag is about 35 pounds completely packed. A lot of the experienced backpackers are going to be pretty much saying, wow, that's really heavy. But you have to remember, for this blog, I have a lot of extra equipment. It's like a mini studio. I have computers and cameras, power supplies, pretty much anything that you would need to do a video blog. But I've seen people backpack for almost a year on about 25 pounds. And that's about average, I would say. I met this one girl, and her bag was like Mary Poppins's. Pretty much, it was about the size of a big handbag, and she pulled everything out of her. She had liquor, she had food, she had clothes. It was pretty impressive. I still haven't gotten to that point yet, but pretty impressive. So that's just an example of what you can accomplish, and now I'm going to go into some more specifics here. The first thing you want to do is look for a backpack. If this is your first time buying one, definitely think long and hard about what you want to do in the future as well, not just this time. So a good general rule of thumb is bags up to about 50 liters are good for urban backpacking or backpacking near home. 50 to 85 liters are for hiking more than a couple days and or camping. And 85 to 120 liters are for really specific things. Usually things that require an awful lot of equipment. Mine, for example, is about 110 liters. It's pretty much about as big as you can get. And I can fit all my camera gear, tripods, clothes, emergency supplies, whatever I really want in there. That I wouldn't recommend though. That's really easy to overpack, especially if you don't need all that kind of stuff. One thing you might want to look into is whether or not you need a day bag. If you have a small bag and you're just like urban backpacking, you probably don't need one. But if you have a large backpack like mine, you'll probably want it so you can go around a city, take pictures while leaving your big bag back in the hostel. Clothing. People seem to pack an awful lot of clothing. We're all used to picking stuff that matches, things for certain occasions, and really you have to get out of that state of mind. Pick clothes that have dual purpose and that will stand up to a lot of punishment, but at the same time not be too heavy. Clothes may seem really light, but when you pack them all together, it adds up really quick. So for this trip, it's a year long. I packed 2 pairs of jeans, a pair of shorts, 2 long shirts, 2 t-shirts. And that's not including the coat, which I'll get into in a little bit. But all those things will hold up to an awful lot of punishment, and most of them I can change out fairly quickly. For example, right now I'm wearing long sleeve, but when it's hot, I can just roll up my sleeve. I mean, it sounds really simple, but a lot of people don't think of stuff like that. That's something I definitely suggest because you can always wash clothes. You don't need a lot. Also, if you're doing urban backpacking, you're probably not going to be going to fancy restaurants. So don't pack anything like khakis and collared shirts unless you really want to do a lot of partying at clubs or whatnot. Even then, I've gone into plenty of fancy hotels and restaurants just looking like kind of like a bum. They'll let you in. You just have to kind of get over that embarrassment factor. Shoes. I know that I just went over clothes, but shoes can be something completely different. I pack general purpose hiking shoes. They're Timberlands, and I find I can pretty much use them anywhere on any occasion. But if you are packing, say, for cold weather or hot weather, you may be tempted to pack boots or sandals or whatnot. I would suggest layering. I'm using my hiking boots, but with really thick socks for cold weather. And for hot weather, I actually have a pair of those toe shoes. They're really teeny when you pack them up. But at the same time, when I'm leaving the hostel for the day and I really don't want to put on my big hiking shoes, I'll just slip those on. So my personal rule is 2 shoes max. Many people just have 1. I would not put any more than those because you can't really fold those up. You can't put them anywhere where they're not going to be a nuisance. Just stick to as few shoes as possible. So cold weather gear. I talked about earlier having a coat that was dual layered, and I really stick by this because a coat can take up about 1/4 of what you're bringing. There's a lot of situations you'll need a coat, like when you just need to be warm, something waterproof, something windproof. But there's not a lot of situations where you need all those all at once. So sometimes they're going to be too hot, too cold, not enough wind breaking, all that stuff if you just buy one type of coat. So what I do instead of buying multiple types of coat is buy dual layered. They don't have to come dual layered. For the longest time, I just had a big, really warm kind of wool coat, and then I bought a Gore-Tex windbreaker that would go over it that was also waterproof. So I could either just wear the windbreaker that would block the wind and block the rain, but I didn't have to wear the coat. I could stay cool. At the same time, say I really didn't want the non-breathability of Gore-Tex, but at the same time be nice and warm, I could just wear the warm coat. But if I wanted both, I could just combine them together. It took up the space of 1 coat, but it had the capabilities of 3. That is definitely what I would suggest. One thing you really need to think about is layering. I talked about it in the shoes a little bit, but for example, I'm expecting some really cold weather. I am leaving in December, going to some places which are cold, but I'm not bringing snow pants or anything like that. One thing that I do is long johns, my jeans, and then if I need it, put over a very thin Gore-Tex pants liner. And a lot of these things don't really look all that great, but it'll save you a lot of space. One thing that a lot of people forget are safety items and security items. Right here I have a first aid kit. It is really big. You probably don't need something this big, but I'm kind of paranoid about that kind of stuff. I have gotten into some scrapes with people, and I am going to be going to a couple countries which are not friendly to Eastern Asians or just not people who are not white in general. So I'm expecting to get into a couple more scuffles. Typically I can avoid them, but you never know. Plus there's any amount of hiking that can get me into trouble. An injury when you're in the middle of nowhere can become either life-threatening or a huge inconvenience. Even just something as small as a scrape or a cut. So definitely make sure that you have something to treat this with. As for security, I always bring a lock of some kind. There we go. Couldn't find it for a second. I prefer combo locks because you can lose keys. I lose things when I travel all the time. But as long as you have a good memory, a combo lock will do you just fine. A lot of hostels have lockers to put away your valuables, but they almost never provide locks. So just bring one with you. I am trying this thing out. This is a master lock case thing. I don't know exactly what it's called. But one thing that I found is a lot of hostels, I guess I really shouldn't say a lot. Some hostels don't have lockers. And I'm always super paranoid about my stuff. I mean, you lose like a credit card or a passport and your trip is pretty much over. So I bought this. It opens up. You can put stuff like your phone and money and whatnot in here. Close it up, locks. You can also remove, let's see if I can get this off first try. You can remove this part, wrap it around something, lock it back in. So what I'm probably going to do is put it in my backpack, lock it around the spine, and if someone wants it, I guess I'll have to steal my entire backpack. So, I mean, that would suck if they stole my entire backpack, but it's better than just putting their greasy hands in there and grabbing whatever they want. Remember power supplies. A lot of people nowadays bring laptops, iPhones, and whatever. There's Wi-Fi in almost every hostel. But what a lot of people forget, and this is something that usually you can buy on the spot, but if you bring it, it'll save you some money, is power supplies that'll fit into different outlets. A lot of people forget that certain countries also have different voltage. So general rule of thumb is most places are 110. European countries or places that are colonized by European countries usually have 220. I have this thing here, and it has multiple plugs that'll fit just about everything. If you are going to bring just a couple, US standard and European standard are the most widely used, I find. There are a couple countries that'll throw a wild card at you, but that'll get you just about anywhere. Medicine and labeling. I use some of these pills when traveling, and they're mostly for like traveler's diarrhea or anything unexpected. I also have malaria medicine. Keep them in the case with the label on them. This is when you stop by customs or a police officer is looking through your bag or whatever unexpected thing happens, and they're wondering what these mysterious pills are. You can tell them all you want, but if they don't believe you, they're going to take it from you, or you can find yourself in trouble. I take things out of the tin and put them in bags just because it saves me space. But when I do, like this pipe tobacco, it looks like tobacco, not weed, but some people don't know, or they might think I'm trying to deceive them. I put the label on. I don't know if you can see that there. Put the label on from the tin. At least then I have something to kind of corroborate my story. They may not believe me and take it anyway, but it's better than doing nothing. So when in doubt and it looks kind of suspicious, put the official label on it, or just keep it in the official container. One thing that can make things easy is just deciding between two of the same thing. An example of this would be wall chargers and USB cables, like iPhones, iPads, battery chargers, or whatnot. They usually come in one or two forms, and just picking one of them, you really don't need both. Can save on a lot of weight. I have a lot of things, and they almost all seem to use a different kind of USB, which kind of sucks. So instead of having a bunch of different cables, I just have a bunch of these different adapters that plug into the same thing. Also, I use battery chargers instead of DC cables. Saves on space, and I personally think that they're more efficient. Putting things into baggies. This isn't something that really saves on weight, but as far as trying to fit everything together space-wise, it's a really big help. I like to put my most used items all into one bag and then my least used items in another one and put them at the bottom of my pack. The first thing you do usually when you get to a hostel is pull out all the cables that you want to charge all your stuff with. Super easy if you have them all in one bag, and I think it helps keep track of them before I put them away and move on. Also, things like I showed you with the tobacco, those usually come in tins instead of having a tin that's always going to be the same size. Once it's in a bag, the more I use, the smaller the bag gets. Plus, I can start rolling it up or squishing it, however I need to take care of it. The added benefit also, if you're using like Ziplocs and whatnot, is the potential of waterproofing. Now, you can't always count on that because they wear through pretty quick. One thing that a lot of people, especially nowadays, are more uncomfortable with, but saves a lot of weight, is do you need your computer or iPhone or anything that really connects to social media or whatnot if you're not doing work? Do you really need that? Most of the time, no. Some people might disagree with me. If I wasn't doing all this blogging, I would not have a computer with me. I personally like not being people not being able to get a hold of me or being able to get a hold of other people. Obviously, I do usually carry something with me just for emergencies, but it's almost turned off the entire time. Just something to think about, because when you think of computers and all the cables that come with them and hard drives or whatever else, that's just something else that can get stolen, and it takes up a lot of space and adds weight. Do you really need it? Are you going to be playing games or whatever you use it for? Are you really going to be using that? Most hostels have computers. If you really want to stay in touch with people or use email, you usually can use theirs or someone else's. Now I'm going to talk about specific items that I find save space and work really well. The first one is called a micro towel. This is what it looks like. It's super thin. It's a little bit bigger than, I guess about half the size of an actual towel. But as you can see, super thin. Now, it's not all nice and fluffy like your towel at home, but it'll get the job done and it dries out fairly quick. Mine came with this little carrying case, which is great because, I mean, look how small this thing is. Almost all my toiletries are in here too, so not very much space being taken up. I went over the locks already, but this is a must if you want to keep your stuff safe. You can have these little TSA locks. I mean, in hostels, no one's really going to be breaking bolts off or anything like that. So you can usually get away with a little TSA lock if you need to. Sewing kit. If you're going on a long-term trip like me, this is very handy. Things break, things rip. I've got a pair of pants where the pocket is completely destroyed and I can't put stuff in it. All I have to do is get another piece of cloth, sew it up, don't have to buy new pants. E-reader. I like to read a lot. Books get very heavy, especially when you have lots of them. So unless you want to read one book the entire time, I suggest you get an e-reader. They're getting pretty cheap now. The only thing you have to worry about is their DRM. Even if it says it reads EPUBs and you already have EPUBs or it's a different provider or publisher, they might not always transfer because of the DRM. Just be aware of that. One thing they can also do is buy stuff on site or mail it back when you don't want them. So pretty much say if there's only one portion of your trip where you're going to be in a cold area. Just buy a coat down there and get rid of it. Something cheap, you know? Then you're not carrying all that weight with you just for that one thing. Also, if you want to bring your own, have a friend. Mail it to a friend when you're done. That way you have it when you get back and not wasting anything. The only problem with mailing things is they really need, your friend or whoever's receiving it really needs to be expecting it. Some things I do like put in a bag and give to a friend, kind of like extra parts, maybe another camera. So if mine gets stolen, hey, mail this to me. That way my trip doesn't end. I don't have to go buy a new one. When I pack stuff, I always seem to pack the heavy stuff on the top. I think it's because the heavy stuff I use more often and I want it easily accessible. Standard conventional wisdom says you put the heavy stuff on the bottom. I don't really do that. It doesn't really bother me. It might bother you. It's really up to you how you want to pack. Just don't be lazy about it and you can fit a lot of stuff in there. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions ahead, but as long as you're smart about it and you can deal with a lot of inconvenient things, you really don't need very much at all. Typical backpacker just has clothes, maybe his iPhone to keep in touch with, I don't know, Facebook or something, and that's about it. You can pretty much acquire everything on site. Most places where you go, no matter how poor they are, or you may think that they don't have anything, really do have quite a bit of stuff. And you're almost never more than a couple hours away from a town, or if absolutely need be, like hitchhiking to a place where you can get supplies or whatever. So don't really panic about having emergency stuff. That's something I used to do. I didn't know what kind of adventures I'd be getting into, so I always packed a lot of extra crap, like camping stoves, emergency food supplies. I had this ceramic filter that I would use to pump water out of rivers and streams. While that all came in useful at one point in time, the majority of the time I didn't need it, and it was just adding weight. Now I am able to get everything into my pack. I mean, all my studio equipment, and these things are the heaviest things I've ever brought with me. Like here, just take a look at the microphone I have to use. This thing is heavy, and it's huge. You know? The pop filter that goes with it. You know? There's no reason to have stuff like this except when I'm trying to do videos, because I have to balance between portability and quality of audio and whatnot. That's why some of these videos may be, I guess, not cheaply made, but may not be really high-end, may not look like it's done by a professional. I guess I should say most definitely doesn't look like it's made by a professional. But that's because I'm working with really affordable and portable equipment. Stuff I can replace if it gets stolen, and stuff I can find elsewhere if I need, let's say, batteries or whatnot. So just keep that in mind. Part of traveling is compromise. And really when it's done and over, some of the best memories you're going to have is when you're out in the snowstorm and you barely had anything to keep you warm, but you were able to keep going and get to your destination. Or when you were in the rain and you just had to deal with it for 2-3 hours. You know, stuff like that. Like, I know it's kind of cliche where they say hardship builds character, but it kind of does. And when you go back to regular life, really things aren't going to bother you as much. And you're going to look back at this trip with pretty fond memories, no matter how much it sucked at the time. So just keep all this stuff in mind, and I guess I probably didn't hit up everything, but if you have any more questions, I'll see if I can answer them during the Q&A section. So be safe out there, and hopefully this helps you guys out. Thank you. Just in case you guys were wondering, this is what my bag looks like. Pretty monstrous, huh?